I would say that I'm not super big on frameworks.
Okay.
But this continuous development, this continuous learning framework, it's sort of, like I said, with my approach for learning new tools. The world is changing so quickly. You either adapt or die, essentially.
Welcome to WITT. Hi, I'm Megan. I talk with founders, investors, and operators working in tech. My aim is to inspire you with their stories and perspectives. Through this podcast, I want to amplify the voice of women working in tech. If you want to support WITT, then make sure you follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Then you won't miss any future episodes. Today, we're joined by Mariah, a global marketing expert shaping brands and innovation. From 100 to Helsinki Partners, she's mastering storytelling in tech and beyond. Let's dive in. Hi, Mariah. Welcome to WITT. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here, Megan.
Awesome. I would love to kick off our conversation with a lightning round. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Great. Jumping straight into our first question. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
Oh, that's an easy one, actually. I would be an educator. That was what my background was in.
Nice. Very smooth and simple. Nice. And then a fun one. If you could sing only one karaoke song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
This is perfect for me, but it would be Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine. And I love karaoke, so I already have that one locked down.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about digital marketing?
These days, that it could be done only using AI.
Okay. Controversial. I like it.
Yeah.
Number 4. If you could run a marathon anywhere in the world, where would it be?
This is a good one. I've actually really been wanting to run a marathon too. Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere.
Oh, too many to choose from. I'm going to play it safe and just say in Finland because I love running in this country. It's beautiful. You get the sea, you get the land.
Yeah. So, in the summer, I presume.
In the summer, even in the fall, because I was thinking someplace warm, but if it's too hot, then it's really hard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You like it definitely. in the autumn.
Okay. And then if you could rebrand Finland in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, rebrand. This is tough because this is actually my job.
Yeah.
Happy, inclusive, and innovative. Although I don't think any of those are actually rebranding it, but more making sure that the world knows that we are these things.
That's what I was going to say. But those are good words. They're a good idea. What would you say is the most valuable lesson you've learned from failure?
You can always pivot.
Okay. Very simple. I like it.
Yeah, you never really fail. You just learn, and then that directs the next place you go.
Yeah. Do you have any life mottos you strive by?
Strive by.
Or try to.
Try to. I don't. The only one that comes to mind is look your best when you feel your worst. This has kind of served me through some tough times in life to try to keep, and even, not just physically, but just presenting yourself, even if you're going through some tough time, because you never know what somebody else is going through.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic and it makes sense. So that's good. What is your go-to strategy for staying productive and focused?
We've actually been using the agile method, and I think that has been really helpful. That we do at work. I've been breaking things down into tasks and ticking them off that way. So I found that that's been really helpful. And when I don't do that, even in my personal life, when you don't have the sort of set projects that you tick off, then it's quite difficult because I have a little bit of a hard time sometimes to focus.
Hmm.
So keeping track of things that way has been
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah, I've had to do that a lot more lately, so I understand where you're coming from. And then, what is the best way to stand out in a competitive industry?
Oh, oh, that's a good one.
Good questions, yes.
Yes. Um, it's always to be yourself. I know that that's cliche to say, but
Hmm.
we all come with our own experiences, and I think, um, especially from my background, going
Yeah.
from education to tech, I think that's been something not everyone does, and so really leveraging that, what makes you unique.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, cliche, but
Very
it's very
cliche, I
true.
know.
Very true. I understand. And then, last question for the lightning round is if you had to describe your entrepreneurial journey, or just generally your journey, in three emojis, what would they be?
Hmm. Um, they would be the globe,
Hmm. Okay.
the globe emoji, um, the book emoji,
A book.
the
Okay.
book emoji, and then that the like girl on the computer.
Sounds great. Some good emojis. Well, that was great. That was awesome. Thank you so much for answering my lightning round questions. Let's move on to your journey, right? So you're originally from the United States, I believe, but have lived in Europe for the past 5 years, I think now. Is it
10.
10 years? Okay, so
Years, yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
But tell me a bit about the transition between the US to Europe. How was that?
Sure. So well, actually, maybe it starts before I transitioned to Europe, but when I was finishing up university in
Mm-hmm.
the US, I studied in Chicago. I'd actually done two sort of abroad, like semesters abroad. So
Okay.
first in India, where I was working with majority nonprofits working in gender, food, and labor.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I went and was living in Shanghai for about 6 months. And so when I was focused mostly on business and doing some logistic things. And when I graduated, I had wanted to go and study abroad in Spain to
Mm-hmm.
improve my Spanish, but I never got the chance. So I got the opportunity to teach English there. So I did that for 2 years, and it really lit a passion for me in education. And at the time, Finland was known globally for education. They had just ranked in the PISA
Mm-hmm.
results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I was thinking about going to do a master's, and I ended up getting accepted at a university in Oulu in the north of Finland.
Yep.
And that's where what led me to Finland. When
Right.
I got there, it was quite interesting having a business background, but being in education because I started to get involved in all of these startup events right away when maybe the majority of my colleagues or classmates were more focused on this sort of deep education. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew the benefit that could happen when you also focus on startups and businesses. And of course, it can seem quite detached, but I do feel like it also helped support my journey and really led me to where I am now. So I got exposed to the startup ecosystem in Finland, first in Oulu through polar bear pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I moved down to Helsinki, ultimately that helped me to find work here. So that was shortly
Mm-hmm.
some background on my on how I got where I am.
Yeah. No, it sounds awesome. Uh, and how do you think that kind of experience between moving to lots of, I knew that you've been to lots of different countries. How does that kind of impact your views on Finland, let's say?
I think it's really, I would think it's really helped me appreciate Finland a lot
Mm-hmm.
more. I say quite often that I loved Spain. I loved living there. I learned a lot, but I feel like I fell in love or became more who I am in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to surround myself with a great group of people. I was able to become, I think, who I am now, and I'm really happy
Mhm.
with this person. So, having lived in different places, I was able to appreciate some things about Finland that maybe I wouldn't have been able to appreciate before. How easy it is, in terms of finding housing, how the trust works in society, how secure you feel with other people,
Yeah.
and just how I think, especially coming from Spain, which it's a great place, but getting a document signed, you have to go to the physical location. You have to get a stamp, and
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
they're on a cigarette break, and maybe they just don't come back. Whereas everything I did in Finland, it's so digitalized, and
Hmm.
it's just it's hard to explain to people who haven't gone through it, but it really was for me
Yeah.
quite easy. I know it's not easy for everyone, but having the experience of moving to different places before, the same in China, I needed to get a stamp of approval from the government. I had to send my passport, and they had it for like 6 months. So coming here, it was so easy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting how different so many cultures are, and people don't understand that if they haven't kind of lived through that system. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I
Yeah.
also believe that you moved around a lot when you were younger.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That is
Yes?
true.
Great. And how do you think that affected your perspective in different school systems?
Um, I think it really did. And when I was younger, I moved around within quite a small area, but I think it
Hmm.
really gave me the perspective of how different things could be, even moving, just a couple 100 kilometers away, how different the school system could be, how different it feels, the environment. And
Yeah.
it really helped me to appreciate both how big and how small the world is, and how,
Hmm.
different people can do things. And then having studied education, and being able to see really the differences globally, I think it's always beneficial to have a wider perspective on the world. And
Hmm.
I know that's cliche again, but
Yeah. But it's important,
it
let's
is
just say.
important.
It's very important to have those different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I have a bit of an interesting question that I wanted to ask you, which is if you could redesign the school system as you are
Mm.
very kind of involved in that space, what's one thing you would change?
Which school system?
Just any school system you can choose.
Any school system. I would say this a broad question, but I would say,
Mm-hmm.
I think students should have the freedom to design the future for themselves. So not following
Mm,
that
okay.
sort of template of you have to go to university or you have to do this. Like, I think the world is changing so quickly, and unfortunately, schools, like many kind of big institutions, can't change as quickly. But I think it's important that we give young people the freedom to design that path for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I believe you've attended six schools. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah. Because I was
Very
thinking
more.
about it while I was doing some research, and I was like, I've been to seven schools, so
Seven
I'm
schools.
beating you by one.
Just one, yeah. I think, yeah, 6 or 7. Well, when I was younger, yeah, maybe you beat me by one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a competition. I mean, it is
Yeah.
a little bit, but it's okay. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I want to switch it up a little bit. You talked about this in the beginning. So how did you really, I know that you went to the University of Oulu, but how did you really get into the startup scene, entrepreneurial scene? Like, how did that come about?
I have to give a shout out to one of my close friends,
Hmm.
Viera.
Yeah.
She was in my, I think you know her. She's, we had both arrived at the same time for the
Hmm.
same program. And I remember, I think it was the first day, we knew that we needed two things: a bed and a bike, in
Okay.
order to live in Oulu, because the apartments were unfurnished, and in order
Hmm.
to get around, biking is the way to go in Oulu.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
remember spending the day with her, going to a secondhand store to try
Hmm.
and get both of those things. And she was telling me she had already joined all the groups, knew all the events, had signed up for a startup weekend. I
Hmm.
felt so behind.
Okay.
and talking to her and knowing she'd already done so much research and so I very happily jumped on board and couldn't be happier for the results because I
Mm,
think it's really positively impacted my experience in Finland being so involved so early on.
awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's interesting
yeah,
that
that's
she
how it
was
happened.
the reason and you felt left behind. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I felt yeah, I felt it's funny because I had had more experience moving, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I have always approached it in that when I get to the new place, I sort of try to uncover everything
Mm-hmm.
once I arrive. And she had been so far ahead of me in getting things settled, and so it was also great to have someone, and we're still close friends to this day.
Yeah.
But she had already mapped everything out, and I was happy to jump on board.
Awesome. Yeah. So one of the events that you were helping with volunteering at was polar bear pitching, which I attended for the first time this year. Yay.
Oh.
It was awesome. And yeah, I had a really great time. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you think that volunteering at these different events helped build your kind of skills and networking? Like, how do you think it helped?
I would say that it was invaluable. That
Mm-hmm.
volunteering, not just for polar bear pitching, I also volunteered at Startup Refugees
Yeah.
at the time, and it really helped me to build a network. And I think it's the easiest way to sort of crack into to the Finnish society, which is not
Mm-hmm.
typically known for being a very open one. However, it
Yes.
is a culture, I think, of this sort of volunteering work, and so first through polar bear pitching and then through startup refugees, I was able
Mm-hmm.
to create a network. And I would say that every job I've ever landed in Finland has been through some sort of connection. And
Okay.
volunteering through polar bear pitching, I was able to join the board, get more experience. And then ultimately, when I did make the move uh, from Oulu to Helsinki. It was I was looking for a job, and I was able to get a job because of a connection that I knew through some of this volunteering efforts. So I would say that anyone who's new in Finland or just coming to this country should definitely take
Yeah.
advantage of that. I know it's not always, especially when you're setting up a new life.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to do something that can financially benefit you, but you have to be able to see in the long term uh, and so
Yeah.
volunteering has been really,
Definitely. I mean,
really
Finland
crucial
is
for me.
very much a place of connections. If you know people, they all know each other, so it's just you just have to find someone to introduce you to other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And now you are working at Helsinki Partners in B2B content marketing. How is that different? Like, what is the process here? What does it look like
Different from,
from just volunteering
no,
or just
very
the
different.
other stuff?
Yeah. So I've been at Helsinki Partners for almost 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my journey there has been quite interesting. I started with the B2B marketing. Then
Yeah.
I was moved into website development. So we redesigned our website. And now I'm working more towards growth. So it's been quite a journey for me and a learning experience along the
Ooh.
way. I had
Okay.
I really appreciate working at Helsinki Partners. I had, as I said, had experience working in nonprofits, and I think Helsinki Partners is an organization that is completely owned by the city of Helsinki. We're a
Mm-hmm.
separate entity, but we do the international marketing for visitors, talent, and businesses.
Yeah,
And being able to move from business then to visitors and talent has been quite quite an interesting journey. So getting that B2B and
mm-hmm.
B2C experience, but then also feeling like I'm contributing to the city becoming a more inclusive place.
Definitely.
Technically, I've also been able to grow my skills. I've learned so many tools. My colleagues jokingly tell me that I introduced too many new tools to the team. So I'm always looking for new ways to grow my skills, whether that's through different platforms or
Mm-hmm.
AI tools, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's been great to be in a space that really encourages that. And having gone
Mm-hmm.
from more of the startup work, which is where I started when after I moved to Helsinki and then moving
Mm-hmm.
to this sort of mid-sized team. It's also been interesting when you're in the startup world, you kind of have to do everything,
Yeah.
be everyone for everyone with very limited resources. So I'm sort
Mm-hmm.
of working my way now to this mid-sized company where we have more resources. If I want to do something, I'm still able to kind of do it myself. I don't have to go through too much red tape. So
Yeah.
that's my journey from this more startup, small scale to now more mid-ranged
Interesting.
company.
Would you say that's a hard kind of transition or?
I think it's an easier transition than going to like a big company
Yeah.
would, at least from what I've heard. Yeah, people who have gone from the startup world into these kind of larger organizations, it can be quite limiting. And in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, I think it's been a nice transition for me that I still get the freedom and the flexibility to work on projects and to do the things that I want to do without having to go through
Mm-hmm.
too many rounds of approvals.
Yeah.
So I think it's been nice. I also feel like if you start at a big company and you work your way down, then you have sort of the different expectations of what you're allowed to do, and you start
Mm-hmm.
off quite restricted. So for me it's been a nice transition.
That's good. That's nice. So next, I want to dig into your frameworks, right? So we talked a bit about, and I want to get a better understanding of what you mean by continuous learning approach. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it was interesting you gave me this question. I would say that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super big on frameworks.
Okay.
Um, But this continuous development, this continuous learning framework is sort of, like I said, with my approach for learning new tools, is the
Mm-hmm.
world is changing so quickly. You either adapt or die,
Yeah. Yes.
essentially.
Very true.
So for me, that's been sort of my mindset that if there's
Mm-hmm.
something new, I also really enjoy playing around with different things. And when
Yeah.
I see a new tool or when something comes up, I try to learn as much as I can about it by just playing around, seeing where it leads
Mm-hmm.
and learning as much as I can. And Finland is really, I think one of the other things that I appreciate so much about this country is it was when I was here that they talk a lot about this lifelong learning.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's sort of what I mean by this continuous
Okay.
learning that it doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
They say, especially when it comes to things like dementia or anything, when you're kind of looking into
Mm-hmm.
older age, you need to continually learn and develop. So that's what I try to do.
Very cool. And is this a framework that you've been, I know you don't like frameworks, but
Yeah.
is this a framework that you've kind of developed with the people you work with, or is it more kind of your thing?
Uh, I would say it's maybe more of
Mm-hmm.
a personal framework or something that I myself try to stick to, and it's being somebody who's also moved around a bit. I think you can appreciate that when you have to adapt to new situations and new places, then you have to learn to survive. So
Yeah. Survival of the fittest.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's really interesting framework actually. But yeah, that was great. And we have sadly come to the end of the podcast. But I have three final questions for you. Very important ones. Imagine it's 2035.
Mm.
What does your life look like?
Ooh. Um, it's so it's so hard to say when
Mm-hmm.
the world being what it is. I can only hope that there is peace, that
Mm-hmm.
I am doing something that I love, continuing to learn,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that I have continued to grow my skills and surround myself with people who support that. Very vague,
No, I mean, obviously no one knows what their life is actually going to look like, but it's good to have a general idea of what you hope for. And I think that's really admirable. 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 But yeah. And then how can listeners follow along with your journey?
So you can follow me on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Mariah O'Mara. And then, of course, to follow along with Helsinki, you should visit myhelsinki.fi if you're interested in coming to the city or learning anything about it. So I would say after redesigning the website, that's something that I'm really proud of and that I hope that
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
both visit the website, but then ultimately visit Helsinki as well, because I think one thing that Finns don't do well enough is brag for themselves.
True. Very
So I
true.
want
We
to try
have to
to
brag for them.
brag for Finland, yeah.
And then how can listeners be useful to you?
Um, how can listeners be useful to me?
Yeah.
They can they can come and visit Helsinki and help us meet
Okay.
our quota, reach out, share. I'm always looking to connect with new people with
Yeah.
different
Ask
experiences. So
questions, all of that
ask
sorts of
questions,
stuff.
continue to
Awesome.
learn. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really looking forward to following along with your journey and bragging for Finland. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this week's show. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Do consider leaving a review as it helps the podcast tremendously.